Cool, ladies and gentlemen.
Cool.
Let's prepare to be amazed as we explore the transformative impact of Luminate on Hershey's business, revolutionizing sales, supply chain, and retail execution. They will take you behind the scenes of this incredible journey in the next 40 minutes. And as we are welcoming our distinguished speakers, 4 of them. Ladies and gentlemen, give me a thunderous applause and let's start.
All right, hello, hi. So this is kind of a little joint story telling you about a big old project, a big old journey that we've been on kind of as 2 separate companies. There's Advancing Analytics, hello, I'm Simon Whiteley, hi, and Hershey's. So I'm Simon, we've got Zach with us.
Hey everyone, I'm Zach Stegers. I was on this very large project, wrapping up now. Excited to tell you all about it.
I'm Jordan with Hershey. Yeah, it's been a long journey, about a year in the process, so excited to share with you guys some of our learnings and findings from the trip.
Yeah, and I'm Chad Doremus, Senior Manager of Commercial Data Strategy at Hershey Company. We've got a really exciting story to tell you about here today, starting off with just some of our Hershey's leading snacking powerhouse vision. We're going to talk a little bit about our partnership with Advancing Analytics and how over the last couple of years we've gotten to this point, and do a little bit of a project spotlight on our Walmart Luminate project most recently, but that's one example of how we've used this platform powered by Databricks to drive our data and analytics. So we're going to start off with a quick poll. So Simon didn't mention, but Advancing Analytics is based in London, UK. We're based in Hershey, Pennsylvania, obviously. I'm going to do kind of a high-low to see in Reese's cups, so think about just a couple of inches, how far away do you think Hershey, Pennsylvania is to London, UK? So raise your hand if you think it's under 200 million Reese's cups. Under 200 million. Everyone's pretty confident? Okay. What about over 200 million? Over? Yeah. 384 million Reese's cups. So pretty far journey, obviously with things like Teams, or we have easy collaboration tools here, but just a fun way to kickstart our session here today. So Hershey's a pretty reputable and brand that you might recognize in the store. Right? We've been around for over 125 years, and we continue to deliver moments of goodness. If you didn't meet our chocolate concierge folks, we've brought our product for you to keep you awake after lunch here and kind of keep you going.
If you want more, there's tons.
If you want more of this, come up here. It's first come, first serve. But we've been delivering moments of goodness, and that is really our tagline for how we think about our product. But today we're much more than just a chocolate company, right? From a small town, Hershey, Pennsylvania. If you haven't been there, it's a very magical place to take yourself as an adult or a child. But we are really driving ourselves into becoming a dynamic snacking powerhouse. There's a lot of brands on here. Some of you might recognize but not know that Hershey created. And really, whether it's the sales of these products or how we think about how we grow our business, data and analytics is really at the center of how we think about our business and growth. So we have this kind of idea of becoming a leading snacking powerhouse, and that is really our core strategy of how we grow. But we in our commercial data organization think about it a little bit differently. And some of our core kind of tenets are building trust in our data, right? How do we use Databricks as a platform to bring in data, build trust, have data quality layers on top of that so we can trust the data that we're actually using and giving to our business users. Freeing our data, right? We've seen a lot about data silos, and Unity Catalog will bring a lot of that to fruition here. But how do we get our data in the hands of our actual users and break down those silos and remove some of the tribal knowledge that we had before? How do we empower our business to make sure that we get that data in their hands to make decisions to continue to grow our business, and then ultimately evolving our data-driven culture as a company? We are a very data-hungry company, and Databricks as a platform has really helped us grow into what we have today. So meet the commercial data store. This is something that we partnered with Advancing Analytics a few years ago to start developing as Azure Databricks platform. And our vision is really to be a single source of truth for commercial data and analytics to deliver real-time and actionable insights. And this is really at the core of what platform we use to deliver this Walmart Luminate API. And we weren't able to do that in the fact that we had this commercial data store already in place, had other retailers flowing into that. But this really gave us that kind of baseline to continue to execute the project that we're going to talk a little bit about. So it really comes with a couple of different kind of pieces of this, right? Data foundation. How do we start with bringing in the core data that we're going to talk a little bit about, specific to Walmart, but other data assets, and then think about layering them on top of one another. How do we think about automation integration? So we spent so much time historically building reports, building Excel documents, maybe into Power BI tools and things like that, but we're really thinking of end-to-end automation, no touch. How do we get our business teams from building reports to delivering additional insights and selling more of our product. And that really brings us to the kind of thought leadership aspect of this project and what that means for Hershey. So I'm going to pass it to Simon. He's going to talk a little bit about our journey together as a collaboration, and we'll talk more about the project from there.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're advancing analytics. Whilst I am a snacking powerhouse, we are not a chocolate specialist. And we're based in London, or kind of generally around the UK, but we don't have a town named after us. We're not there yet. And that's kind of an interesting one, right? There's a big differential in terms of big, huge, very old, very kind of well-known company, and a fairly young startup company doing fairly specialist things. Now, we do a bunch of different stuff. But like that thought leadership element, that kind of idea of, do we know what we're talking about? Well, there's a bunch of us that are Microsoft MVPs. I'm a Databricks beacon. Anyone ever heard of the Databricks beacons? That's the most I've ever had in a room. This is my Databricks beacon jacket. There are 13 of us in the world. But essentially, we spend our lives building out this kind of thing, challenging how people are trying to build stuff. I used to build warehouses, and I've built SSIS and SQL Server, and I've been doing that for so long. And this whole journey of going, we can challenge that. We can do things differently. We can actually start to build things a little bit better. And we've been doing that for quite a while now. Again, we're in London, generated via an LLM, very on theme. That's my London skyline. And we want to talk about this thing a little bit. So Hydr8. So that is a Lakehouse accelerator. So that is years ago. We spoke to a client, and they said, can you just automate things? Can you make things faster? Can you just make it so we can just put some metadata somewhere and make this stuff go automated? And we did. And when we spoke to another client, and they said, could you do it again? And so we did. And it's getting to that point of building out a framework, right? Building an idea that you can push this stuff forwards. Now, I say like pioneers, because these days you can talk to loads of different consultancies. Lots of people have some kind of Lakehouse acceleration framework. When we started working with the Hershey guys, that was back early 2020. This is years and years ago when Delta was good but not great. Certain things you couldn't do. Certain things we were building and features were being released, and we were going, actually, yeah, we can build those in. And it was very bleeding edge, very pushing the boundary of what is possible. So yeah, you may know us. I do lots and lots of YouTube. We talk about this stuff on the internet lots. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's the thing I'm meant to say, right? And yeah, so what actually is it? So we say the CDS platform, we say, what is this Hydr8 type thing? Well, it's a Lakehouse pattern. Now, so we're essentially doing exactly what we're saying. We need to ingest data. We need to get data into the system. And if we talk about that, we talk about saying, well, okay, I need to pull a piece of data from somewhere, be it someone's sent us an Excel spread, someone sent us a CSV, someone's given us an API to call, someone's given us some Parquet. And then to pick that up, I need to clean it. And then I need to pick that up, I need to shape it into a different pattern. And actually, when you look at that, and you start taking a step back of actually going, well, you know what, this is all the same. I'm doing the same thing. I'm picking up some data, I'm cleaning the data, I'm shaping the data, I'm applying some business logic. It all becomes very repeatable if you're using something you can build programmatically. So the idea of using Spark to do this, the idea of saying, so in that pattern, we're landing some data, we're using Autoloader. So we have that file ingestion. It's the Databricks feature that essentially watches for files dropping, allows you to suck that in. We're then using Spark. We're using PySpark notebooks just to say, well, actually, because I can write Spark dynamically, you can write a single Spark script that says, pick up some data, apply some changes to it, and write it down. And that's such a transformation for how we used to think about things. We used to, if I had 100 different tables to load, I would write 100 different SQL scripts, 100 different scripts. I'd maintain it, I'd deploy it, I'd test those different scripts. Now we can say, well, we're going to have a single script. And yeah, it's slightly more complex. We're talking about Python, not just reams and reams of SQL. But it suddenly becomes easier, faster, because actually you're only looking after a very small amount of code and then just throwing parameters at it. Call this one script 1,000 times with just different parameters passed each time, and that is automation, right? And so that's the journey that we went on, is going through those ideas, kind of as the tech stack was changing under us, and actually building out what's the best way to do this. How do we take people on that journey? So Hydr8 is essentially that. It's our reference architecture with a bunch of stuff in there. There's 3 main points I want to make. One, it's metadata-driven. The whole idea is we're saying, scrape a load of information about whatever source we're trying to load. Turn that into what we call data contracts. Now data contracts is an interesting term because it's exploded in the mesh world. but essentially define your data. It's decorative. We want to say, to load this piece of data, I don't care what that piece of data is, but to load that piece of data, here's the rules, here's the security, here's where it should live in the lake, here's where it should be applied. And building that as a metadata-driven approach. So you're separating the idea of code deployment from metadata deployment. You're not constantly deploying new versions of the code because the code doesn't change. So you don't need to go and retest everything that's already in there because you haven't changed the code, you're just adding more metadata. Suddenly you're faster, you're more agile, you can work in a much, much smarter way. We're stream first. Again, that's a different way of thinking about it. So Autoloader is a streaming technology. Now, it's not to say we're immediately streaming everything and everything's an event stream, but we use the Spark approaches of stream once. So we kick off the thing, it uses Spark streaming, whether that's an Autoloader or just Delta to Delta streaming, and it says, what hasn't been loaded since I last ran? What's come into my source table since I last ran? Load it, and then stop. And all the complexity that we've had to build over and over and over again of saying all the watermarking in my ETL framework, keeping a load of dates against every single table, saying this is what I have and haven't loaded, it just goes away. You can just kick off your entire thing and it'll go, what's come in since I last ran? Cool, I'll just process that. So the idea of using streaming technologies and building that into it, not from a, we have to do real time, everything has to do real time, but from a, we want to take advantage of the automation. We want to take advantage of the good technology that's sitting there and go, I want these things to just improve our lives. And that's like, again, a big switch. And it's all about, again, being cutting edge. Everything we were doing, we were constantly kind of evaluating, which was a little bit frustrating in some cases. We'd build it, and then there'd be a big announcement, and we'd go, there's a new way we can do it now. I think the times have changed. There's a little shifting foundation. And now this is back in 2020. And again, over the years, it's a lot less shifting, a lot less stable. It's a lot more stable. These things have become more mainstream. These things have solidified as actually the technology has matured and it has grown, which is why, 3 years ago, we're saying, everyone should build a lakehouse. That was the message. The message of this summit was, guys, you should be building a lakehouse. Did anyone hear that message today? Because the assumption is everyone's already got a lakehouse, right? Because the technology matured. It's no longer trying to convince you this is the way to go. It's kind of a known factor that this is the way to go. But we've had a few years of keeping on top of it. All right. So what came next?
The project. So I think everybody's here. You're at the Databricks conference. All right, we got that. I think the biggest thing for us with this Luminate project, which, by the way, the Walmart team back there, great partners, highly recommend going down this path with them in the future within your organization, whatever you are, within whatever category, manufacturer you are. But I think this Hydr8 framework that Simon just kind of set up really enabled us to be able to go fast. We brought advanced analytics in because we needed to do it quick. We kind of saw the writing on the wall with some of the old legacy systems that we were tapping into via a vendor, third party. I think, again, people probably know all the vendors that are out there that do kind of analytics with Walmart's data. And so it was very cumbersome. I think I'm mentioning 5,000 queries weekly running that were essentially aggregating our data to then be exposed to the business team via Excel. I always say I don't want to ever talk badly about what we did before, but it started to become apparent that we weren't going to be able to keep up with Walmart's pace in particular if we didn't transition over to their new platform called Luminate. I think the big number here that or the two big numbers are the bottom ones there, where we had, when we were doing our kind of like inventory assessment of what we had before bringing advanced analytics in to help us integrate, ingest, and expose this data out, I noticed there were over 1,500 unique reports that people were using out there. And so maybe 1,000 of them were from people who left the organization and were just kind of sitting out there spinning their wheels and queuing data and making data available to nobody, which added to the 10 hours roughly of process time every single day to get data. I mean, it started at 3 a.m. and it became available at 9 to 3 p.m. See some people smiling and laughing, like that is the world we lived in. Again, it did the job. It allowed us to make business decisions, to grow at the pace that we were growing as Hershey. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen, but like Hershey's a $10 billion company now. And so that doesn't happen unless you have data to make decisions. So this was not this way stinks so bad that we need to, it's hindering us from doing what we're doing as a business. It was more of the writing on the wall. We saw Walmart producing a product that was going to be more efficient, have more data that we've never had before around omni and shopper behavior and shopper insights and things like that. And so, again, having this CDS framework with Hydr8 and with Databricks enabled us to say, all right, we've got a solution to bring the new data in. Let's bring a team in to help us build out our new ecosystem. So if I would give you one thing to walk away from, I would say it was absolutely worth it to go down this 12-month journey. I don't know where you're at in your journey, but come talk to us about it. There's a lot of lessons learned. It wasn't perfect, but I think it really set us up for the future of one single source of truth for data with Walmart in particular. We dropped it down to roughly 40 unique reports from 1,500. And then we also, our process ingestion time from the time that Walmart makes it available to us early in the morning to the time that the data is ready to go for our business users, about 1 to 2, 3 hours max. And so consistency was a huge win, where sometimes it would be available at 9 a.m. in the old way, and sometimes it wouldn't be available at all because we didn't know what was going on in the portal until now. We've got contacts, we've got partnership, we have accountability, and it's just as honestly where we are going, and I think where the industry is going with data as a whole. So, and then with that, kind of like I mentioned, the data landscape was rapidly changing. There were some announcements that I'm sure you guys all heard of via the old portal saying, hey, this is going away, bot usage, all that kind of stuff. And so we kind of, again, saw the writing on the wall. And the CDS framework literally helped us tremendously, integrate, implement, and then garner the adoption of the new reporting, which has been probably the hardest part. So I would say focus really hard on what's going to be new and helping people kind of string along in the journey. That was one of our biggest lessons learned. We had the framework, we had the processes, we had the team, we had the talent. It was just garnering that adoption through change management, honestly. And this is just a quick, ingest, harmonization, visualization, and I'll give it to Zach here. He'll lay it out for you technically. I'll say one thing before he jumps into the technical side. The biggest thing that I saw with working with Advancing Analytics was their willingness to learn our business, where we maybe haven't seen that as much with some tech providers, and it really helped their learning curve to be able to understand the Hershey lingo, the Hershey business, where we're trying to get to, and what the business is trying to see within their data, so that it was not just them building things and checking a box and saying we completed the deliverable. It was more, what is this deliverable and how do we understand it better so that we can deliver a better product for you? So, Zach?
Thank you very much, Jordan. Appreciate that. Okay. As the team here have laid out, this has been quite a long project. We've been going on this for nearly 13 months. And now you're going to watch me try and distill those 13 months into about 5 slides. So this is going to be relatively high level, but I will try and cover as much as I can. If you do have any questions for after this session, please come and find me, Gareth here in the front row, one of our lead engineers on this project, or anyone who stood up here today. Please come and find one of us and talk to us about it. But yeah, data ingestion. Data ingestion. So with Luminate, there is a status polling mechanism. So we have to poll to understand whether data is or isn't available. When you onboard as a Luminate customer, you're giving a consumer ID and a jar file. Now we hosted that jar file in an Azure function, and that provided us with flexibility to call it from different places. So in this example, we're calling it from a Databricks notebook, but you could call it from a web application, for example, if you wanted to do more real-time analytics using this authentication method and present that back in a web application. So we had that built out there in an Azure function, and we call that in our notebook. That returns a list of all of the available endpoints and whether they are available or not. So they return available, which means there is data. They return no data, which means it's available, but there's no data to be pulled, or they provide unavailable. We wait for all of those endpoints to become available, and once they are, we essentially loop over. We move on. Status polling is essentially complete at that point. We move on to this next phase of acquisition. We again call that exact same Azure function to regenerate our authentication headers. And then we hit the API for each of the endpoints that we're interested in, like items and store information, each have their own endpoint. That returns a pre-authenticated URL where you can download the data. and it may provide one or more of those URLs depending on the volume of data available that day. And we iterate over those in Azure Data Factory and land the data in a landing blob. Simon was talking about Hydr8 earlier, and this is essentially how it feeds into Hydr8. So the only piece that we had to build beyond what was already laid out in 2020 or so was the data acquisition piece. So everything from raw, standard, curated, all of that was already there. We had standard patterns and standard notebooks that we progressed the data through. We didn't have to build everything from scratch. It was just that initial ingestion piece that needed to be worked out. And then there were some tweaks and whatnot to the primary platform. It had aged, technology has evolved, Delta's moved on, other things have moved on, so there were enhancements made to the platform as we went, but the primary objective being implementing Luminate. As for harmonization, Luminate was the primary source, but it wasn't the only source. So we also ingested data from Salesforce. We integrated SharePoint, where we pulled CSV files, Excel files, and that enabled us to attribute Walmart Luminate data in the Hershey language, so they could assign their attributes to store data, for example. And I mentioned that all went through raw and standard in that same pattern, and then landed in two models. So there's a Hershey-only model, and then there's a category advisor model stored completely separately, secured completely separately, and those models had a combined measure count of over 800 measures. So just to speak to the amount of, the volume of metrics that are available to you via Luminate, and how fine-tuned you can be with measuring your business. From there, those curated models were used by internal applications, so they were used to feed into data applications and essentially drive other business functions. It was used in analytical systems so that SQL analysts or Python analysts could drop in and query the data or start to do things like data science if that's an ambition. Feed into other automated workflows and help automate other processes outside of just analytics, and of course in direct dashboards. We've got all sorts of personas using this, and people like field sales going into stores and actually using dashboards within the store to understand store configurations or things like that. We have supply chain looking at inventory at a national, regional, or even store level, and looking at store demand forecasts versus what's actually being ordered. And of course, executive summaries, looking at a 360 view of supply chain and seasonality and all kinds of things. So there's sort of really rich data coming and being used in all sorts of ways throughout the Hershey business. We're using Databricks SQL to visualize this, to serve this out. And that's been a challenge because some of these tables have well in excess of 10 billion rows, and they are very, very wide. So it's not that we just have a table of 10 billion rows of integers. Speaking of those 800 measures, they're also very, very wide. So to optimize that for a wide variety of dashboards and reporting use cases is very challenging. But we land the data in our curated layer of the data lake in Delta. We then have a notebook that contains serving view definitions. So they strip out things like lineage columns, they apply semantic naming to columns, and create that as a view layer. Those views are then served out using Databricks SQL, and again, SQL analysts, Power BI, and Tableau, and Excel all connect into that to either query it on an ad hoc basis or look at it in pre-built dashboards. And then I just wanted to shout out the team, really. This has been a phenomenal project, one that's I think we all take a lot of pride in being able to say we delivered. And as I say, Gareth, top left there, is sat just here down the front. I'm sure he'll hate me calling that out, but yeah, come and speak to any one of us if you want to learn a little bit more about this project. It's been a really great partnership, and I've enjoyed working with this team. So thank you very much. Yeah,
then we'll, real quick, before we get into some questions, and again, if we don't have enough time, come see us, come find us. We'll answer any questions you guys have. But I think there's a couple pillars that we wanted to really make sure this audience here, again, Databricks, you know the tool, you know how awesome it is. This team really helped us serve it up to the business team in a way that was usable to unlock the data versus I think there's sometimes a push of like, hey, yeah, just come in and SQL what you need. Well, business users, especially at Hershey, I don't know about others, they're not just SQL junkies walking around in a senior director role of category management. So we're trying to figure out how do we take the tech and we serve it out in a business-facing, business-friendly way. So this project absolutely kind of, I think, took us to the next level of what was set up back in 2020. But number one, this was critical to Hershey. We saw, again, the writing on the wall. We knew this is where Walmart was going, and we knew this is where we needed to go as an organization to be able to keep up with Walmart's pace, which, as I'm sure everybody knows, Walmart's pace is pretty quick. And we can't sit on our thumbs, just kind of like twiddle them around and say, hey, yeah, Walmart, see you later. We're going to stick back here with our our querying of your old data source. We had to really take a look into the future and honestly go to pretty high lengths to get some approvals and things like that to make sure that this was something that was a priority right now. And I'd say it was worth it. Worth every penny, worth every hour, worth every minute that we spent, even above and beyond our job roles. So would encourage everyone to at least explore it if you haven't already. The other massive thing, honestly, that was something very new for us was having this long-term partnership with Walmart in particular. Again, I shouted them out, those guys in the back. We've never had a partnership with Walmart as it relates to data, so it was always kind of, I call it like the wild, wild west of data before, where we didn't know who to talk to, we had to create tickets, and nothing against the Walmart team for that, but it was very hard to match their pace when there were things that we couldn't control all the time happening to us. Where now we've got an actual name and a face and a team and people who want to deliver accurate data in a timely way to be able to integrate into our ecosystem and allow our business users to make business decisions. So that's huge. And I would say the time we spent leveraging that partnership and getting to know that team and really building that foundational relationship was absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt worth it. And so I would say find somebody, your guy, your gal at Walmart within the data ventures team, link up with them and make sure that they're in your back pocket with all things integration to Luminate. Obviously, again, Databricks is the tool. All right, this has truly enabled us to be able to deliver this project in a timely fashion. So, huge shout out to Ed and the team too, man. This is it's been so fun too, because prior to me being at Hershey, I didn't have any really commercial data experience, and so getting to be a part of a project like this with Databricks as the tool, I've learned a ton, and I have just really seen the acceleration of where they're going, and we just want to kind of hitch along for the ride and partner in more ways than even that we're doing today. And I think that the future is so bright and really positions us strategically to be that leading snacking powerhouse, which again, you probably didn't know, Dots Pretzels and Skinny Pop and Pirates Booty, those are our brands now we've acquired. And so we're trying to step out, not step out of, but step more into the snacking world. And that doesn't come unless we have the tools to enable and drive that growth as an organization. So I think those are just kind of the 4 key takeaways we'd want to give you all today, and thank you for spending some time with us. But there's also a success story, QR code. Everybody's been getting QR coded today or this whole week. There's another one for you, and we got a little Hershey kiss in the middle. You're welcome. And honestly, we'll be around. You can come find us, message us in the app, and we'll talk more about this. This has been our life.
Just in terms of kind of closing up and from the technical side, some of the messages and like learnings from that. So much of what we've managed to achieve, because we had set a foundation of automation early. Because it always feels hard, right? You're about to start a project, and you're like, we could just start getting data in there, or we could spend a few months actually building an engine, and then we'll start reaping the rewards. But that's such a hard conversation to have. Going, why don't we do something that's big and slow at the start? But then when you're then a few years down the line, you suddenly see, actually, we can now pivot, we can be agile, we can start getting stuff in there.
Yeah.
And the messages from this morning, right? So from the keynote, all the various just mad, insane things that Databricks are now coming out with and saying you can now do, all of the, the Lakehouse IQ and that like some intelligent search across your data, really, really hard to achieve that unless you've got that data foundation. I hate to be the naysayer with all of the LLM stuff going on. You cannot do it if you don't have a strong data foundation. Just building something to make sure your data is good and clean and well managed and in the same place and actually just in a place where you can then start taking advantage of it, that's what all this stuff is then going to unlock. You can suddenly be in a place going, oh, that's cool, all these features are coming. You're in a place when you can start working with it. Whereas you don't want to be in a place where going, oh, that sounds cool, I want to do that. It's going to be a journey that we're going to have to go on to get to the place where we can even think about getting the value. So invest in the tech early, invest in thinking about the engine, invest in thinking about automation early, because then when things come down the line, you'll be in the place to take advantage of it. And that's huge, right? That's me as the giant engineering nerd going, yeah, do some more engineering. But it just puts you in the right place if you've got that solid foundation in there.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And there's more candy and chocolate down here, guys.
Final thought.
Come get some
If I can
candy
leave
and
you with
chocolate.
anything.